like to ask you all to introduce yourselves before we get stuck in.
Hello, I'm Kate Nichols. I'm Chief Executive at UK Hospitality.
Hi all, I'm Thomas Greenall, Chief Executive of Bespoke Hotels.
And I'm Andrew Stembridge, Executive Director of Iconic Luxury Hotels.
Thank you very much. If anyone has any questions, please sing out or raise your hand. I will be looking intermittently to see if you are speaking. I'm sure you'll have plenty to ask. I'd just like to ask Kate, where is your pent-up leisure demand coming from?
Holidays that I haven't been able to take during COVID.
Is that because you work in a sector which is like, and you have to practically run it?
No, things that were cancelled. So, you know, I've still got one that's over Christmas that I actually can't take this Christmas, but there was one pre-Christmas break that we were going to do that was cancelled last year because of travel restrictions. I've still got one that will happen in Easter, which was again an Easter rollover. So
nice.
one abroad and one in the UK.
Excellent. See, Kate, supporting the sector, always. I'd like to stay with Kate for a moment because it is budget day. I know it's hilarious that we've had 4 budgets. It's not really that hilarious. The government continues to not support the sector. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn in saying that. And Kate is working her arse off trying to achieve that, as we all are. What would you like to see? Not what we think we're going to see. What would you like to see from our leaders today?
Well, I think we've got to get a grip of inflation and interest rates. We've got to get a grip. We need a bit of calm and stability, because the biggest thing that's impacting what's going on at the moment in the market generally and in our bit of the market, and the previous panel was right, this is going to hit discretionary spend, it's confidence. And you don't have consumer confidence, you don't have investor confidence, you don't have business confidence, you don't have lending confidence in our sector, which makes it very difficult to be able to move forward. And we can see that because we track not only the hotel stats, but we also track the high street spend on a daily and weekly basis. And you can see the immediate impact that you get. If they make an announcement on a Wednesday, it hits the Friday sales. So for good or for ill, so over the summer period, when we had that peak uncertainty and media focus on energy, we saw that consumers weren't coming out, and you had a dip off the August bank holiday weekend. As soon as Liz Truss came out and said there will be 2 years' worth of support, you saw an uptick in bookings and you saw an uptick in people coming out. Again, when you had the catastrophe of the Kamikaze budget, you saw an immediate dip again falling off at the end of September. The Friday payday, which should have been really big in the high street, was a normal Friday. So, I think that's a sort of positive and a negative. Consumers have become much more fickle during COVID, but they do respond very well and they do respond positively, and demand comes back as soon as you get some positivity in. So if we can get today that stability, certainty, yes, there's going to be pain, but we're all in it together, and it's about making it as short and as shallow as we can possibly make it, that would be really helpful, because that underpins our business longer term. Over and above that, I think there's 3 issues that we want them to tackle. One is cyclical, which is energy and inflation. So we need to have a signal about energy support going forward beyond April to make sure that we have that recognition that we're a vulnerable sector and that we have energy support going forward. The second is structural, which is business rates. It's not fit for purpose anymore. It hasn't been fit for purpose for years, but you're not going to get structural, you're not going to unlock that investment in high streets, town centres, communities, and you're not going to unlock the investment that hotels can bring unless you get structural reform of business rates. And the third one is strategic, and Harry touched on it. We've got a labour market that isn't functioning, and we need a long-term economic plan and a long-term labour market plan. And I want to signal on all of those. I'm not expecting a tax cut on all of those, given the context and the framing, but we need to have a strong signal from the Chancellor and from the PM on all 3 of those issues.
Thank you very much. Andrew, you're looking like you have opinions.
Sorry?
You're looking like you have opinions. What would you like to see in the budget?
I agree with Kate. I mean, I think, and what you said before, the sector is still unrecognised, and I think this, going back to sort of what Robin tried to do during the pandemic for lobbying for a Minister of Hospitality, and I still think that we kind of need to bring that back to the table, and I'm not sure... We've
got one. We were successful. We have got 3 ministers for our sector now, so we just need them to deliver. Well, we need them to stop changing.
Yeah. And so, and I think other than that, I think anything that can drive, as Harry said, people into our business, I think it's a crime. And I know I've just come back from a Rallye Chateau conference in Venice, where talking to lots of international hoteliers, and they're all suffering from the same thing. It's not unique to the UK, but I do think the legacy of Brexit is still one that, you know, we're missing that influx of a sort of secondary labour market, which you know, every other nation has, and frankly, I think we can drive and should drive more young people into our business. We need to make it a better place to work and continue to work on that with the Hospitality Charter. But there's always going to be that gap, which I don't think we're going to be able to fill from the UK.
I mean, I had a sneak preview of some of the rateable values, which
I thought you said the budget there for a minute.
rateable values which meant to be coming out in November, and I got really excited the first part of the email. I was like, oh wow, 10%, 15%, 20% reduction. And then I got to the bottom of the email, and it was saying that the multiplier might go up to between 5 and 12%. Kate thinks maybe 12%, so which is a slight concern, because business rates is something that we've got used to not paying much in the last 12, 20, 24 months. So it's going to be a big shock to us in April.
Lovely. Thank you for that. I trust everyone's listening. I'm sure they're still rewriting it as we speak. Going back to where we are at the moment and the search for stability, which is what we all want so we can plan. I think last week at Marriott's results, they were asked whether they saw panic heading in from the leisure sector in particular, and they said, oh, we don't see anything, it should be fine, and then later on admitted that they had 3-week booking window visibility, so really no visibility at all. So how are you seeing booking patterns at the moment? Have we gone back to a pre-pandemic, or are we in a new normal?
So, I mean, from our perspective, lead time's definitely gone back to pre-pandemic, where we you know, certainly looking at our rural properties, we were this time last year running about 6 months, and it's gone down to between 45 and 50 days, and then obviously in the city even shorter. So from that perspective, I think what leisure's still stronger though. So I think that pent-up demand is still there. We're still seeing that, and I think that'll be driven. I mean, obviously, if our benchmark is 19, not 22. Then I think we are, you know, we're definitely forecasting and budgeting to be ahead, both in terms of rate and a little bit of occupancy as well. So I think if we can, you know, I think as an industry, we can maintain those rates. I think we have to. I think people have got used to paying a fairer price for what they're used to, and I think as long as we can maintain that and not panic, you know, certainly we're seeing as well with the, you know, thankfully we're not overly reliant on the OTAs in our business. You know, we've got a lot of direct business, but again, so we're actually again predicting that we'll increase year on year, but actually we will go back to sitting below where we were in 19. So I think it's actually, you know, for me we're being fairly optimistic, as I say, very optimistic relative to 19, not too bad compared to last year. But obviously, the elephant in the room is margin, as we've talked about earlier, and how we can mitigate the increases in costs, I think, is the challenge for us all, and that's what we're focused on.
I think we'll get to that in a second. I think one of the things that we've seen that's been most optimistic, but in a kind of troubling class warfare way, and it's a shame that Bob's not here to back me up on this, is that at the very top end, you're seeing obviously inflation bad, but inflation bad for people who are eating the food. We're all eating the food, but we only eat a certain amount, and it only affects a certain number of people. For the top 20%, which is what we're seeing a lot of in luxury hotels, obviously, it's not really having any impact. So there is some hope to be had, particularly at the higher end of luxury, but it's we haven't quite got to the messaging part where it's not like, oh well, poor people, that's tough tits, but we're off doing our golf. So I think there's some hope to be had, but as you said, margin's obviously an issue. We've been asked to talk about only optimistic things here, so we're going to talk about how the planet is burning, and we need to do something about it. Sustainability, margins and energy. How are you seeing the sector adopting that at the moment, Kate? Is this being driven by wanting to lower energy costs? Is it a push from above? In the hotel sector, it's going to be a legal thing. We're all going to have to be doing a certain percentage of energy whatnots.
Yes, I mean, I think it's driven by all of those things. It's just which one comes to the fore the most. So when we were working on the Net Zero Charter and we were working on collective solutions for reducing energy use, for finding greener energy uses, for doing energy audits and energy efficiency, it was primarily driven in 2020, 2021, that work, around ESG. And the communication to guests. I mean, prior to that, it was also driven by COVID, let's be frank. You know, the amount of time we were going in and cleaning rooms and the amount of laundry we were doing, the messaging there was around COVID and infections and not having too many people going in. It then came out and it was about ESG, how we could build on that, learn from those lessons of COVID and make a positive statement around our contribution for carbon net zero. And also important for our young people that we were looking to recruit, because that environmental sustainability agenda is an important driver of those people choosing to work with brands. And I think that's one of the things that we can see as the younger generation makes a more positive and proactive choice, not just as a consumer, but as an employee. Over the last year, it has certainly flipped towards how can we reduce energy consumption, how can we reduce demand, how can we manage that risk. And then obviously given the extra lens, and I'm sorry if we're only supposed to talk positives, but you know, the National Grid's winter plan coming out, talking about...
I can't think about the National Grid's winter plan.
Potentially, you know, rolling blackouts if we don't conserve and have protection of demand. I think that's given an added emphasis. But, you know, if you've got something where, you know, over the course of a year, energy has gone from, in our benchmarking survey, the 4th largest cost centre, around 5 to 6% of turnover at an outlet level, to the 2nd largest cost centre, and about 18% more than rent and rates combined if you're in the high street, not necessarily in hotels, but you know, that's a big focus on how you can make the margin and the profitability and the viability of the business work. Because when I talk to hoteliers, they all talk about the fact that the demand is reasonably strong, is returning. They've never worked as hard to get to turn a profit on any of the money that's coming in, if they can turn a profit. So I think that's where you get the pressure and the emphasis at the moment around energy and energy efficiency.
I think we're doing really well as an industry recently in actually using less energy. I mean, I've been banging the drum for years and really struggling with our hotels to get them behind it. Suddenly, with the prices gone up so much, I'm seeing huge changes. And that's without lots of capex. I mean, it's LED lights and stuff, but it's looking at. Well, I think in the luxury sector, you know, that's of, you know, Andrew's probably going to disagree with me, but you know, we can't be heating the rooms up all day just for the guest to arrive at 4 or 5 in the afternoon. It was always an excuse from the GMs. Oh, we're 5-star. We've got to have them, you know, toasty hot. And we've switched. We've changed that now, and it's making a huge difference. I mean, in one 5-star hotel with 80 bedrooms, we've managed to cut our usage by 25%. And it's
is this by making them cold, or by giving them jumpers, or by working out when they come in?
It's about actually analysing it, and now all the energy providers have these portals. You can go on and see your half-hourly readings. It's really starting to granularly analyse the usage throughout the day and understand, because as hoteliers, we're not energy experts. We don't know really what appliances are using energy and what's not. So it's actually trying to analyse that and make some decisions on the back of it. And that's before we actually go and spend money on capital projects, which is much easier now because the returns, you know, can be done in 12 months rather than 10 years now.
And what are you doing in terms of capital projects?
So, not enough, to be honest.
What would you like to be doing?
I'd like to be really getting control of the BMSs in these hotels, and actually having modern BMSs where we can really control the temperature of the bedrooms. Kitchens are a ridiculous source of energy. I never realised how much they were. I mean, we've had a couple of home office contracts recently, so I've managed to shut the kitchen off completely, and the energy has dropped by 35%. So huge, and this was a fairly big hotel. So, you know, trying to understand what in the kitchen is high usage, and actually changing the kitchen practices in line with energy usage, I think is important.
It's an interesting point you make about shutting off kitchens, and I think we'll come back to it in a second. But I'm fascinated to know, Andrew, are your guests freezing to death now? How are your guests? Are they cold? Or are you keeping them warm?
I don't completely agree with Thomas. And I think the challenge is when we're charging more than we've ever charged before, I think there's this sort of value issue which we got away with during the pandemic with reduced services, which have had to be reintroduced. And I think there's a lot of business to be had out there, but people have choice now that they didn't have during the pandemic, and so therefore we have to offer value. And I think there are things we can do. I mean, we've got an energy reduction plan in all of our hotels, and generally historically there has been no focus on it, and there is a lot you can achieve with just some really simple measures and a plan in place. We're investing in behind-the-scenes technology as well, and new plant and, to say, kitchens, taking out gas and putting in induction, etc. And the hotels haven't got it. So there are, and positively from our ownership, there's a real appetite to invest in anything which reduces our energy. But I think from a guest perspective, we've got big spas. They're as bad as kitchens. There's a limit to how much you can reduce the temperature of pools and et cetera, et cetera. So it is a problem. And I think for us, it's looking at other ways of obviously reducing, and just generally reducing costs in general. But it is, it's hard, and especially when, if you look at buildings like Cliveden, it's a listed building, single glazed, clanky old heating and drafty windows. There's a limit to actually what you can do. But I think with a clear plan in place, and say we're like most businesses now, we're very focused on ESG. We're very focused on having a plan, and I think it's a lot of it's just educating the team and making sure that where we can, we can just make little incremental improvements all over the place.
Thank you. Anybody got any questions at this stage? Can't be about golf. All the questions are about golf. So going back to F&B, and there's been an increased focus, obviously, on revenue per square metre as opposed to RevPAR because of the pandemic. F&B is very expensive. I understand that sort of Cliveden, you can't not feed people because they're all... But is there an opportunity for hotels to sack off F&B entirely? It's expensive. Often there's only 2 or 3 people in the room. Is now the time to say, let's push people back onto the high street? There's usually lots of great restaurants around where you are in a hotel. Let's work together as a more cohesive hospitality sector and make more money.
I think in a new build, it's going to be really, really hard to make F&B commercially worthwhile. If you're in London, I think there's a new Tribute brand in the city, 360 rooms. Very small restaurant, but it's their grab and go, which is making an absolute fortune. It's a real challenge, and as hoteliers, I think we do get left behind slightly when compared to the specialist restaurateurs, and it's hard for us to do things as well as they do. But it's something we've got to focus. A lot of our guests want a really good F&B experience. And we've got to keep at it. We've got to keep innovating. We've got to keep trying new things. If I don't know if anyone here is from the Ivy Group, but they've been really clever with some of their production of their food, and it's something that we've probably all got to look at.
Andrew, on that front, how are you driving? We've got lots and lots of technology people in here today, lots of people who I know. We heard from Harry earlier about how technology is great for staffing and reducing staffing, and we'll have a little chat about that. But also, it drives a lot of good service, even in the luxury sector. And we've seen a lot of drive towards that. Are you using more technology? Is it helping you drive ancillary revenue? Is it helping you cut staff? Is it helping you improve service? Do we need staff?
Yes.
Excellent.
So I think, on the staffing front, we've installed No-Cross in all our properties, and that is giving us the ability to measure something which previously was fairly immeasurable. So we've got useful stats, and when you've got information, you can make improvements on what you do. So I think as and this is where I run 5 independent hotels. I think probably this is where the large change probably have at times an edge in terms of process, and I think one of our focuses is making sure we introduce much more process into our business and cut waste out of that process. So, in just making sure that we're operating more efficiently, which again, in buildings which were never designed as hotels in the first place, is often very hard to do, but there are things you can do. And I think this drive to maintain margin is making us look under sort of every stone in that respect. I mean, I think in terms of other, the whole sort of process of driving TrevPAR and that's something which, again, investing in technology, especially in our sort of CRM, making sure that we've got this, sort of pushing, so for us, we tend to have a captive audience in our rural properties, and making sure that prior to, it's interesting, we've done some sort of useful analysis on the sort of digital booking and the sort of the impact on book flow from having too many processes in terms of traveling. So it's actually making sure we get the booking in and then go back afterwards and making sure that people are booked into the spas, booked into the restaurants, and again making sure that actually they do, our restaurants do make money when they're busy, and and yes, the margin has been squeezed, but there is still good margin to be had, especially now that we are able to charge more. So I think it's not being, for me, it's the wrong thing to do to run away from it. I think we need to bring in those efficiencies, make sure at the purchasing stage as well that we're using, again, we've got the benefit of being part of a larger organisation, L&R Hotels. So we're tapping into that for the right. It doesn't work for everything we buy because, again, we've got very, very different kitchens and very different menus. But I think, as Thomas said, there's definitely opportunities, dark kitchens, looking at how we can, without feeling like we're standardizing anything, looking at standardizing some of the products. I mean, we have done things like, Cliveden, a couple of years ago, actually pre-pandemic, we closed for lunch, but we do twice as many afternoon teas. So again, that's just looking at the margin on afternoon tea is much better. The demand is there. Why not? I think you have to find the right thing. In London, our latest hotel we opened, Mayfair Townhouse. We don't really have a restaurant there. We only have a bar and do breakfast. And I think, certainly in a city, it's really, really hard when you've got, there's 200 restaurants in Mayfair, or at least there were pre-pandemic. And again, why try and compete? I think it's really hard to drive, I think, people into restaurants if you're in a city, because on the whole, people want to go out. So I think there isn't one set rule, to be honest with you, but I do think there is definitely margin there in F&B, but we do need to learn from the chains, and we do need to operate more efficiently.
Kate, you're nodding sagely.
Yeah.
Good.
I always try to. I think
it's coming across really well.
Well, but what's coming across is that there isn't going to be a one-size-fits-all, and it's a much more nuanced marketplace coming out of COVID and dealing with the perma-crisis that we've got, because we don't have the same customers, we don't deal with them in the same way. But the common thread through all of this is that we haven't had to work really hard at this previously. We've traded in quite a benign environment, so you haven't had to worry too much about staffing because there's been a pool of people that can come. You haven't really had to worry about energy and energy costs because it hasn't been an issue of supply and it hasn't been at such a high price. So, and you haven't had to worry about whether your F&B is profitable or not because, again, it didn't really make much difference materially. Now what you're looking at is that you do need to drill down into the detail of the business and work out what works, and you need data. And you need data to be able to make those decisions and inform those decisions. Then you can apply the technology. Technology is not the solution. Data is the solution that drives it. Then you automate the mundane, which frees up your team to deliver the value for experience, because only a person can deliver the experience. And quite frankly, that's what your guests are paying for. That's what we're all paying for. And that's where the pent-up demand will still come from. People want the experience. If you look in global rankings, the other bit of data that we've got is that we are 134th out of 135 countries in price competitiveness, which is fine if you're able to deliver that Rolls-Royce service. And that's what all of this comes back to, whether it's at a Premier Inn or a bed and breakfast level, or whether it's at the most luxury end. You're wanting value for experience, and you need to have the data to be able to tell you what will motivate those consumers, what gives them value for money, and what gets them coming back.
You're absolutely right on all fronts. And I think certainly in the hotel sector, we've seen as it's moved into becoming more of a mainstream asset class and has attracted the pension funds and people like that, they want to see this data and they want to see how you're running your hotel. And not everyone loves that, but it is making for a more efficient and rigorous operation.
And I think there's learnings, as Andrew says, across the whole of the hospitality sector, which is why UK hospitality brings everybody together, because the pubs went through this painful patch in 2018. The casual dining teams went through it in 2018, where they had to do exactly the same thing. They had multiple owners, multiple asset classes. The margin was not there. The model was broken for the investment, and it's hotels that are now facing that challenge as well. So there are learnings across all of the bits of hospitality that we can bring to bear to help.
Any questions from the floor? It's the end of our time. Aha! Yes, please. Do we? Oh, there's a microphone appearing behind you.
Hi, thank you. I'm Nicola from the Independent Hotel Show and HRC. I was just wondering if you think that ESG and the kind of luxury guest experience are on a bit of a collision course, or if there's still enough innovation from suppliers and hospitality businesses to make sure that we can have ESG while maintaining that luxury experience.
I would say that they're far from on a collision course. If you look at where the real spend is going from sustainable green tourism, people will pay a premium for it, and your more affluent consumers will go and do that. If we can make ourselves a sustainable green tourism destination, we will get global visitors across coming and paying more, and it doesn't conflict at all with luxury, as long as the luxury when you get here has that sustainability credential that is authentic. It has to be authentic, it has to be real, it can't be a greenwash. But as an example, one of my pent-up demands that was 3 years in coming through, I went to Costa Rica for my holiday with the children this summer. They market themselves as being the most sustainable tourist destination on the planet. And they really live and drive it. And the value that you get and the spend per head from going to those elements that are sustainable, that have that narrative, people are willing to pay a premium for it. It was very, very top end. And the Americans were also willing to pay that as well.
Did your children put pressure on you to go to a holiday destination that was...
Yes, they did. They have no qualm at all about it as being it's a long-haul flight. I mean, go figure, we have to be as green as we possibly can, but we'll get on a plane for 17 hours and fly to wherever it is. But you plant trees and you offset it and you do all of that kind of stuff. But yes, sustainability and a sustainable tourism, that was a key driver. And my children are 17 and 20. They were 14 and 18 when we booked it. So that I don't think there's any conflict at all. I think the conflict at the present moment in time comes at the budget end of the market, because we know from every single recessionary period we go through that consumers tell us they want green, they want organic, and they're willing to pay a premium for it until we get to a cost of living crisis and it costs more to do it, in which case it goes totally out the window. And the supermarkets will tell you that as well. So at the budget end of the market, I think there is a potential collision, but not at the top end. And the government has set us as the Tourism Industry Council two big agendas. One is sustainability, and the other one is to make sure that we are the most inclusive and accessible tourist destination in Europe by 2025. That's the one I'm chairing. And sustainability, diversity, inclusivity all come as part and parcel of it, because we tend to think sustainability and think green. Sustainability is also about our people, it's about our employment practices, it's about our communities that we operate in, it's about diversity and inclusivity. So I think we can market that. And the one thing that the pandemic has shown us, and where the government and the Mayor of London has put money behind it, marketing in those niche markets and those areas works. It drives footfall, it drives people into beds, and if you drive people staying in beds, the rest of the economy benefits.
Yeah, I think, I can't remember what the stat is, but I think in Google search terms, sustainable hotels has grown at something like 60% year on year. It's incredible. I mean, I think, as Kate said, I mean, ESG, you have to look at it holistically. It isn't just about leaving towels in the bath when you want them changed. And I think, again, in the same way that people think of hospitality as just chefs and housekeepers, it isn't that. So, and I think at the very luxury end, those millionaires, billionaires, they're still going to travel by private jet. That's not going to change. And I think it's finding ways of making sure that we are dealing with it in an authentic and holistic manner, but not expecting them to walk into cold bedrooms or have half the number of fluffy white towels that they once had. So, but you know, so I think they're definitely not on a crash course. We need to work with them, but I think it's about doing the right things. You know, again, carbon offset, for example. There's lots of things that we can be doing to address it, and we just need to make sure we are doing those right things, not misunderstanding what it means to that particular market and what they want to see. So, and a lot of things that actually, frankly, we've been doing for we're going through a sort of a big ESG audit at the moment, and it's amazing how when you look at good, strong businesses, there's a lot that we are doing already, which is is very strong already in terms of the making sure that we're buying locally, etc., and that's something that very much that engages with that luxury audience in terms of they're looking for an authentic experience. They're looking at something where they're, let's say, connecting with local suppliers, etc., and that very much ticks that box as well. So I think for me, it's making sure we look at it holistically.
Many thanks. I'm informed by both the time and a lovely handmade sign that our time here is very much up. So I'd like you all to join me in thanking my wonderful panel. And as Kate said, it's all about data, it's all about numbers, it's all about working out what to do, and there are a lot of people in that exhibitor space who can help you do exactly that. So do go and look at them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine Dogrell, for chairing that and the previous session. Thank you so much.